Hey guys, I thought I'd just make a quick video for you outlining how exactly I process my vocals. I know that when I listen to music on YouTube, I'm always curious to see people's individual mixing techniques, and so I figured I'd show you guys mine. Now, this video will be more of an overview of my vocal production process, so if you guys have any more specific questions about plugins or any questions in general, of course you can always leave them in the comment section below and I'll get to them as quickly as possible. As a quick side note, the vocals you're about to hear were recorded on the Rode NT1A microphone going into the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 audio interface. All right, let's jump into it. So here we are in my Logic session for my cover of Madeline Island by Owl City. So I'm going to start out just by showing you this little vocal pass in the context of the rest of the mix with all of the vocal processing turned on, and then I will break down exactly how I process my vocals in this song.
We left our cares on the mainland, boarded a ferry boat. We saw a point for the first time, and we felt right at home.
Okay, so the first thing in the chain for me is always pitch correction. So for pitch correction, I use Melodyne Assistant. So Melodyne Assistant is a industry standard vocal tuning plugin. The reason why Melodyne is so great is because it allows you to manually tune your vocals, unlike something like Auto Tune, which, as the name suggests, automatically tunes your vocals and can often give that either a robotic effect or not enough tuning. So this allows you to tune to the amount you want, but you can like individually change the transitions in between pitches so that you keep that natural sound while still maybe tuning your vocals a little bit harder or to taste. The next plugin that I pretty much always put right after Melodyne is RX7 Declick by Isotope. So Isotope makes this group of plugins called their RX7 line, which basically is just a group of plugins that are geared towards audio repair. So in this case, when you're recording vocals in the home studio, oftentimes you have these like gross like mouth noises that sound really bad and they sound really loud in the microphone, especially after a lot of compression. And so I use this plugin to get rid of all that stuff. I would show this one as an example. I would like play it, but you won't hear it too much in this particular vocal recording. It's just there to sort of pick up the few clicks that are there. In another recording, in other recordings that I've done, you'd see this work a lot harder and you definitely notice a difference, but it's not really worth pointing out here. However, the next plugin, which is RX7 Voice Denoise in the same group of plugins, this one is essential for the home studio vocal recorder, in my opinion, because this one takes out all that background noise that we all have to deal with when recording in a home studio. So have a listen to this one and especially pay attention to the parts in between the vocal phrases. So I'll start with it off and I'll solo the vocal and I'll listen to the parts in between here.
We left our cares on the mainland, boarded a ferry boat.
So you can, right there, you can even hear not only the room noise, but you can also hear some of the like bleed from my headphones as I'm listening to the track while I'm singing to it. So listen to what it sounds like with it turned on, and you'll even see here, you'll watch the EQ adjusting to reduce the background noise volume. So give it a listen.
We left our cares on the mainland, boarded a ferry boat.
So still not perfect, but now it sounds a lot closer to like a dead vocal booth. And in the context of the rest of the mix, it sounds perfect. So that's one of my all-time favorite plugins and absolutely a must-have. So next up is vocal de-essing. It's exactly what it sounds like. It takes away all those S's and especially those like TH sounds, like the S that you can get with basically any word that starts with an S. And what this plugin does is it compresses just those frequencies that are really sort of harsh. So I'll give you an example of what this sounds like with it off.
We saw a point for the first time.
And you'll also notice over here that I have my compressors turned on, which I'll get to those later. But the reason why I have them turned on is because de-essers are especially useful to use right before compression. So I wanted to give it, because a compression can really exaggerate those S's. So I wanted to give you an example of what it sounds like with the compression still on. So having said that, we'll listen to it one more time.
We saw a point for the first time.
And now with it turned on,
we saw a point for the first time.
So you can see that when the S's when I said the S's, the compressor attenuated or pulled down the volume of those specific frequencies. So that's a super useful plugin. kind of necessary, especially some people have more sibilants than others, but especially for me, this is a great plugin. So next in the chain is just my channel EQ, and this is the one that comes with Logic Pro. So I'll just quickly go over each EQ move and my thought process behind it. So let me just show you what the vocals look like, because there is a analyzer built into this plugin. So it will show you what frequencies your vocals are actually hitting to assist you in equalizing. So here is what it sounds like with the EQ on.
We saw a point for the first time.
So the first thing that I do here is this low cut filter. And the reason why I do this is a lot of times your vocals will have low end information down here that you don't really want in your mix, because all that low end information ends up sort of fighting with all the other low end information from your other instruments, and it sort of makes the mix really muddy and not sound too pleasing, especially on bigger speakers. It can really start messing up your mix. So I always cut my vocals off, usually not this much, but there was a lot of extra low end in these vocals and around in the room noise. So I just took a big sweep all the way up to about 130 hertz. This next EQ decision I made based on the search and destroy method, as I've heard some people call it. The idea of this method is that you take an EQ node and you boost it really high, and you look for the frequency that sounds the worst, and then you cut it down just a little bit. Now you're going to want to be really careful when doing this method, just because just about any frequency is going to sound pretty bad boosted this drastically. So just be really careful that you're finding the one that sounds the worst and then cutting it just a little bit or to taste until it sounds better. And this EQ move is basically the same idea. And these sort of search and destroy EQ moves can really open up your vocal, especially if you're a beginner. You might be surprised at how much this can assist your vocal before even any other processing. You can even put this first in your chain. This last vocal move is just a high shelf to brighten my vocals and give a little bit more air. I think I sang these vocals pretty close to the microphone, so the proximity effect made it so there was all that extra low end, and it kind of overpowered the high end. So I added a little bit more of that back in. So finally, we get to the compression. So I like to do my compression a little bit differently than some people might. It's just multi-stage compression, so it's not that unique, but multi-stage compression just means that I have multiple compressors. Well, I have my vocals going through multiple compressors before they get to your ears. So I use, first of all, this Logic compressor is really a great one. You can choose between all these different styles and colors of compression. So I usually put it through about 2 stages of compression. And this first stage is really gentle. Actually, if you listen to a part of the vocal pass here.
We left our cares on.
Oh, it would be helpful if I had it turned on.
We left our cares on the mainland, boarded a ferry boat.
It's actually really not touching the vocals at all. You will see it later on in the song. Like if I were to show you other parts of the song, it does gently compress a little bit. And so I have like a pretty fast attack time, so that because it's being so gentle, I want it to gently take down some of the transients, which transients just means the beginning of like a sound. So that compressor isn't working too hard. But then going into this next compressor, this one's doing a lot more. So this is the Waves Renaissance channel strip, I believe. And so this is a channel strip, which just means it has a few things built in. So it has an EQ up here, and then a compressor down here, and a few other things like a gate and stuff like that. You can actually change between compressor and gate. So I have it on compression mode. So I really just use this channel strip mostly just for its compressor. I don't really find myself using the EQ hardly at all. But this compressor, I'll show you here. Let me move it out of the way of the vocal. If I play this vocal pass, you can see how much it's compressing.
We left our cares on the mainland.
So even for this not too loud vocal, it's compressing upwards of about 6 decibels, and I have about 1.2 decibels of makeup gain. So this one is really crushing the vocals, which I really like to do. I like to have an extremely compressed vocal sound, because if you do it right, you can end up having a really upfront vocal sound, which to my ear sounds really good. So I go with that. So lastly, after all of this audio processing, I send my vocals to effects. So things like reverb and delay. Now, in a more organized Logic session, I would probably have my effects routed to an aux send, and then I could control each effect with like a fader. But This one is not one of those organized sessions, so I was just kind of lazy and put them right in the vocal chain. So the delay is going into the reverb here. So here's my delay plugin. I'll show you this one first. This is the default delay plugin for Logic. And as you can see, the wet signal here, which defines how much of the delay we hear from the dry vocal, or like the original, you can think of dry as like the original recording. The reason why it's at 0% is because I actually have automation turned on. And so let me show you my delay automation. So if I click A here on the keyboard and then go to delay wet output, you can see where this purple line goes up. This is where the delay is activated. So you can actually watch it go up. Well, actually, let's go back here. So back here, I will play this vocal pass, and you'll see that when I say this phrase, you'll watch the wet meter go up here. So let me pull up the plugin so that you can see it at work. So watch this right here as it passes over this line. So it sounds a lot better in the context of the mix, but that's just to give you an idea of how I use my delays. So next up is the reverb plugin, and this one I also use automation on. I don't think I used the reverb until much later in the song, as you can see here. Right here. So I'll just play this section for you real quick.
Out there in the Great Lake Superior, right across the bay.
So you can see where that line goes up. This reverb turns up as well. So once again, in the context of the mix as a whole, this is what the first verse vocal sounds like.
We left our cares on the mainland, boarded a ferry boat. We saw a point for the first time, and we felt right at home.
So that's it. That's how I process all my vocals. If you guys are interested in seeing the rest of this song, I'm going to be releasing it within the next couple of days, so stay tuned for that. Hit the subscribe button, and thank you guys for watching.
Out there in the Great Lake Superior, right across the